Right? Welcome, everyone. The story begins in a pawn shop that seems empty, except for a mouse on the shelf. An airplane pilot named Petey Shelburne arrives in a frenzy, holding a toy monkey. He rings the bell on the counter frantically until someone appears. The attendant notices that Petey's uniform is stained with blood, and he simply responds that it isn't his. The sign on the wall says that the store does not accept toy returns, but Petey explains that this is not a toy. Looking increasingly deranged, he says the most important thing is to never let the monkey hit the drum under any circumstances. Shortly after, that is exactly what happens. The toy begins to function, and Petey backs away with a look of terror, but the attendant shows that nothing happened. However, at that moment, the mouse finishes gnawing at a string, causing a chain reaction that culminates in a spear piercing the attendant. The monkey then hits the drum once more, and the mechanism reverses, pulling the man's entrails along with the string. Desperate, Petey grabs one of the blowtorches on sale and melts the monkey, shouting words of hatred. However, Petey never returned home, and unaware of all this, his wife Lois thinks he has abandoned the family. Their two children, twins Hal and Bill, also grow up believing this. Bitter, Lois tells the boys that their inheritance will be the cabinet Petey filled with junk from his travels. With less disdain for their father's collection, the two decide to explore the stored objects and end up finding the monkey. On the box, a sticker instructs to turn the key to see something happen. Hal is a bit afraid to meddle with their father's things, but Bill feels entitled to decide since he is a few minutes older. When he turns the key, the monkey starts to move jerkily, somewhat stuck, and the mallet doesn't quite touch the drum. Bill loses interest and prefers to go to his room with an adult-themed deck of cards. A little later, Lois leaves the children with a babysitter named Annie to go on a date. Hal finds it strange when he sees the monkey in the back seat of the car but says nothing, and his brother is more concerned with flirting with the babysitter. The three go to dinner at a Japanese restaurant, and the sushi chef also seems interested in her. In the car, the monkey begins to play the drum by itself while the three watch the kids' knife tricks. The show ends very badly when one of the knives escapes his hand, so sharp that Annie's head remains in place for a few seconds before rolling across the table. At the wake, the only thing worse than the awkward sermon from the rookie priest is Lois's attempt to console the children. She tells them that these misfortunes are common, and it's just a matter of time until everyone dies. The conclusion is that the best thing is to enjoy life while it lasts. The three spend the rest of the day dancing at home, and Hal says it was the best day of his life. The next day is quite different, as a group of girls sets a trap for him in the school bathroom and steals his pants just out of meanness. He arrives home upset and is startled to find the monkey in his room, especially since his mother says she didn't bring it there. Hal begins to suspect that the babysitter's accident was not an accident, and Bill realizes his brother's interest. Besides being bossy, he also considers himself the sole heir to their father's belongings, and so he forces Hal to say some humiliating phrases in exchange for possession of the monkey. The next day, Hal goes to school and finds the toy inside his backpack. The girls' gang does not forgive, and Bill joins them to throw several kilos of bananas at his brother, who returns home all dirty and very angry. Inexplicably, the monkey is on the bed when he enters the room. Hal decides to turn the key again while wishing death upon Bill aloud. The monkey opens its usual grin and raises its right paw, making the mallet spin before falling. Bill is arriving home when it begins to play cheerfully. Then the boy enters the kitchen talking to his mother, but she does not respond. He starts shouting when she slowly turns around, with blood gushing from various points on her head. The doctors explain Lois's death as a rare type of aneurysm, but Hal knows the truth and is filled with guilt. Bill interrupts the wake and starts calling for her, still refusing to believe in the loss. Their Uncle Chip will take care of the boys now, stating to Hal that he and Aunt Ida never wanted to care for children. He promises he will do his best, but warns that in this case, even his best is quite bad. Before the move, Hal decides to put an end to that infernal toy with a meat cleaver. The first blow separates one of the arms, and the boy is disgusted to see that the toy seems to bleed. Even so, he continues cutting and then throws away all the pieces, determined to put an end to this nightmare. The twins then move with their uncles to the town of Casco, Maine. Bill is still very shaken by the tragedy and refuses to take off his jacket, saying he doesn't want to have to put it on again if there's another funeral soon. On one of the first nights in the new house, he sees a flickering light on the porch and goes to the window to investigate, having the impression of seeing a pair of glowing eyes outside. The image dissipates, but the monkey is in the middle of the living room when he returns. Hal is forced to share his suspicions with his brother and also explains how he got rid of the monkey, but doesn't mention that he turned the key on the day of Lois's death. Without that last detail, Bill doesn't understand the extent of the threat and insists on turning the key again to test his brother's theories. The result is indeed another funeral, as Uncle Chip is trampled by 67 horses while in a sleeping bag at a camping area. This convinces the two brothers for good, and knowing that the monkey is indestructible, they decide to throw it in a well so that no one else gets hurt. The plan is not perfect, but works for 25 years. After spending all that time indulging in his hunting and fishing hobbies, Aunt Ida wakes one day to a circus tune playing softly somewhere. Suspicious, she goes downstairs armed to check, and the steps of the basement stairs break just as she is passing. But this is not the end for Aunt Ida, as she gets up screaming, having fallen face first into a stockpile of hooks. After pulling them out one by one, she begins to smell something burning, and brings her nose close to one of the mouths of the stove, which suddenly ignites on its own. Her face becomes a fireball, and she runs out dazed until she crashes into the "For Sale" sign. Meanwhile, Hal is leading a lonely and empty life. The trauma of the monkey prevents him from getting close to people, fearing that any of them will end up in the morgue. He also distanced himself from his brother and says he doesn't miss him much. However, it happens that Hal has a son whom he only sees once a year. His name is Petey, after the grandfather he never met. His mother is married to the famous Ted Hammerman, a parenting guru whose books are even displayed at home. She takes the opportunity to inform him that Ted intends to legally adopt him, and after that, these visits will no longer be necessary. Hal begins to protest, but Ted merely points to his books, showing that it will be pointless to argue with the greatest expert in the task of raising children. The wife recommends that Hal make the most of the days he will spend with Petey to create lasting memories. The boy enters the room just as the adults are losing their composure. Meanwhile, in Aunt Ida's yard, the household objects are for sale at a yard sale, and we see that the monkey is one of them. It is bought by a hairy man named Ricky, who intends to sell it to someone else. His mother does not like these dealings much, since the final buyer is a weird guy who never leaves the house. In the hotel room, Petey takes advantage of the rare moment with his father to complete a school project about his family tree. No topic could be more uncomfortable for Hal, so he even lies that he is an only child. That night, after a terrible nightmare in which the monkey attacks him with a cleaver, Hal wakes up hot and turns on the ventilation. His cell phone rings right at that moment, and the call is from an unknown number, but Hal recognizes his brother's voice as soon as he greets him with insults. Bill says he got this number from the police and tells him about his aunt's bizarre accident. He wants Hal to go to her house to make sure the monkey will not be sold or passed along, as he suspects it may have come out of the well. Hal gets nervous and explains that it is his week with the son, but Bill hasn't changed at all and continues to act as if he commands him. To prevent Petey from waking up, Hal leaves the room and goes to the hotel's common area, where a woman is preparing to dive into the pool. Above on the roof, the ventilation device Hal turned on a few minutes earlier begins to shake until it breaks loose. It rolls off the roof and smashes onto the floor, electrocuting the woman as she enters the water. Hal dodges a loose leg, still incredulous about what happened, and finally believes the monkey is back. Petey doesn't understand anything when his father starts shaking him in desperation and forces him to change hotels in the middle of the night. In the car, Hal tries to explain better, saying his aunt has passed away and now he will need to go to her house to settle some things. The boy says he wants to go with him, and Hal tries to dismiss him with the excuse that the task is too depressing. But then Petey says he knows he will be adopted by his stepfather, and this might be his last trip with Hal, so it would be good for them to be together as much as possible. He asks what his grandmother would think about all this, and Hal feels terrible thinking of Lois. In yet another horrifying nightmare, he sees himself as a child again, hearing his mother's advice until she starts talking about the deaths, and her face explodes in front of him. Hal wakes up frightened and sees that Petey is not in the room. He almost panics, but soon the boy arrives, and the two go to Aunt Ida's house, where they find a real estate agent named Barbara. The first thing she says is that she spoke to Bill Shelburne, accidentally revealing to Petey that Hal lied about not having siblings. Hurt, the boy tells her not to pay too much attention because he will only be Hal's son for a few more days. Barbara is embarrassed and tries to change the subject, telling Hal about the intense week in that neighborhood. Aunt Ida's accident was just the first of a series of bizarre occurrences around there. One of the neighbors was minced by his own lawnmower. A golfer was bitten by a snake that emerged from a hole, and at least one resident of Casco has kicked the bucket in a horrible way every day since then. Hal becomes increasingly anxious with these accounts, while Petey separates from the two and starts snooping around the house, discovering that, on top of everything, Bill and Hal are twins. Now there is only one part of the house left to check, and Barbara fumbles to find the right key. She is testing the last one when Hal has a bad feeling about that room, but cannot explain in time. As soon as the door opens, a shotgun falls from inside and accidentally fires, hitting the realtor. Hal holds one of her fingers, distraught over her fate. The police quickly arrive and recommend that he not leave town for the time being, which means his plans for a day out with his son go down the drain. When Bill calls Aunt Ida's house and tells his brother to wait for news, Hal, after hanging up, starts to suspect that his twin is plotting something. He looks for their last name in the phone book, and there is no one registered, but then he notices something strange. Someone is listed as Mrs. Monkey. Hal dials the number and hears a message with Bill's voice, thanking everyone who worked to help him, and saying that he has already found his toy monkey. Horrified, Hal realizes that it is his brother causing all this chaos. On the other end of the line, we see Bill still wearing a funeral suit, and then we hear his side of the story. He always suspected that Hal had something to do with their mother's death and even went down to the well to retrieve the monkey, but the box had already disappeared, and the only thing left behind was the key. Bill understood that as a promise of return and spent the rest of his life waiting for another sign. Until one day, his fortune cookie came with the message, "Turn the key to see something happen." Coincidentally, that was in 2016, the year of the monkey. Since then, Bill has been preparing for his revenge, and even fixed the suit because now he wants there to be more funerals. Finally, the announcement of the yard sale appeared in the newspaper, and he hired Ricky to bring him back his old friend. Unknowingly, he turned the key for the first time, saying almost the same words Hal did when he tried to kill him. And just like that time, the victim was someone completely uninvolved. However, unlike his brother, Bill is determined to keep trying until he hits the target, even if it takes half the town down with him. Unbeknownst to his despicable nature, Ricky rings Bill's intercom that night, asking to negotiate. He wants to buy the monkey back because he has grown fond of the toy that reminds him of his father. Bill rudely dismisses him, and Ricky is so sad that he goes home to get a gun. Meanwhile, Hal and Petey continue in the same drama. With each new tragedy, Hal thinks about returning his son early or leaving him somewhere else, but Petey gets hurt, and he changes his mind. While the boy goes to the bathroom, Hal calls Bill and tells him that he knows everything. He doesn't even bother to deny it and gives him an ultimatum, saying he will only stop turning the key when Hal brings Petey to him. According to Bill's logic, Lois died when his son activated the monkey, so that must be where he is going wrong. If Petey turns the key, maybe his plan will finally work, and something terrible will happen to Hal. Despite the horror of the idea overall, Hal also knows the hidden rules of that cursed toy. When the monkey plays the drum, the only person who is safe is the one who turned the key. Therefore, if he accepted the offer, it would be a way to ensure Petey's safety. When he exits the bathroom, the two begin to argue again, and then someone knocks on the door. Ricky enters wearing parts of his father's police uniform and points the gun at Hal. He forces the two to go with him to Bill's house so that Petey can pass through the doggy door and steal the monkey. Under the gun's aim, Hal has no choice and simply tells his son not to ever turn the key that's on the back of the monkey. Petey begins to understand that this monkey is the reason for his father's antisocial behavior and finds it ridiculous, still not understanding the situation. He manages to sneak through the doggy door easily and almost gets hit by an axe right in the first corridor. This is just the first of many traps set by his psychopath uncle, but Petey is smart enough to dodge them all. Even so, he almost trips on a stretched wire, which sets a bowling ball in motion, but the contraption comes to a sudden stop as if it has malfunctioned. Then Petey catches his uncle declaiming revenge poems to the monkey and asks if he is okay. Admitting that he is not, Bill asks his nephew to help him with his childhood toy and turn the key. What is really at stake? He has no reason to heed his father's warning. Therefore, he decides at least to satisfy his curiosity and complies with his uncle's request, slowly turning the key. As soon as the monkey smiles and raises its paw, the tree in front of the house begins to sway lightly, and Hal sees that one of the branches is giving way under the weight of a huge beehive. When the monkey brings down the mallet and starts to play, Ricky feels an itch on his head and fumbles with the gun, accidentally firing. The shot doesn't hit anyone, but opens a hole in the windshield that perfectly aligns with an opening in the middle of the beehive. Then the circus tune ends. The monkey stops playing, and the first bee appears immediately. Pulling a line of thousands of others, it flies straight into Ricky's face, passing through the bullet hole. The entire swarm enters the boy's mouth, and he starts to flail about, ending up firing several shots. Even so, Hal escapes unscathed from the incident, exiting the car without a single sting. Losing his patience, Bill snatches the toy from his nephew's hands, and instead of turning the key, grabs the right paw and tries to force it down, trying to make the monkey play by brute force. With great strength, he hits the drum just once, and the effort knocks both of them to the ground. When Bill recovers from the fall, the monkey is sitting with its paw raised. It begins to play again, but without the tune and with a different rhythm. The speed gradually increases until it reaches a frantic pace and then stops abruptly. Bill hears a woman scream in the neighborhood, followed by several other screams and explosions. Peeking through the window, he sees an airplane crashing right in the middle of town. The monkey hits a few more times, breaking the house's roof and causing a passenger dressed as a bride to fall. It becomes evident that all this destruction is punishment for trying to boss around the monkey. When Hal manages to enter the house, Bill is already beginning to regret his actions. He confesses that he did all of this to avenge Lois's death, and Bill also admits what he did, but says that none of this was their fault, that they were still children. After a frank conversation, the two make amends, and Hal invites his brother to join his trip with Petey. It is at this moment that the mallet comes down once more, without warning. The trap that had stopped in the middle starts to spin again, and the bowling ball strikes Bill's head, taking it with it into the wall. Shocked, Hal and Petey begin to exit the car, crossing the widespread chaos Bill caused. A grim figure passes by on the road, looking like one of the horsemen of the apocalypse, with an empty and macabre look. The monkey is in the back seat of the car, and, from now on, the two will have to keep an eye on it. However, Hal decides not to dwell on it all the time, and invites his son to go dance, finally betting on a change of attitude, yet the terrible things are still not over.